Okay, I'm picking up in the mutual holding company section of the reference guide to regulatory compliance on paper page 682 in section D under requirements, which is savings association subsidiaries issuance of stock. The requirements for savings association subsidiaries of mutual holding companies to issue stock to anyone other than the mutual holding company parent must first obtain advance approval of each such issuance from the Fed. The Fed approval of the issuance will be approved as long as the proposed issuance meets the following criteria. A, the issuance is made pursuant to stock issuance plan that meets the requirements of this regulation. B, the stock issuance plan is consistent with the terms of the association's charter, including the type and amount of stock that may be issued. 3, the stock issuance plan would provide the association, its mutual holding company parent, and any other savings association subsidiaries with fully sufficient capital, and would not be inequitable or detrimental to any of these entities or their members. D, the proposed stock price or price range is reasonable. E, the aggregate amount of outstanding stock of the association that is owned or controlled by persons other than the parent holding company will be less than 50% of the total outstanding stock of the association, unless the association was a stock association when it was acquired by the holding company and is not a resulting association or an acquiree association. The association may issue any amount of preferred stock to persons other than its mutual holding company parent as long as it is consistent with any other applicable regulations or laws. And the association furnishes the required information to the Fed. G, the proposed stock issuance would fail to meet the Fed's convenience and need standards. And H, the proposed issuance complies with all other applicable laws. Restrictions and offerings. No representations may be made in connection with the stock offer that the price or the stock has been approved, disapproved, or endorsed by the Fed. And B, other restrictions on offerings. The sale of minority stock of the Stock Savings Association to be made under the Minority Stock Issuance Plan must be completed as promptly as possible within 45 calendar days after the last day of the subscription period. C, in the offer or sale of stock issued under this regulation, no person may employ any device, artifice, or scheme to defraud. 2, make any untrue statement of a material fact or omit to state a material fact necessary to make the statements not misleading. And 3, engage in any practice which operates as a fraud upon a purchaser or seller. D, restriction on offering. Prior to the completion of a stock issuance, no person may transfer or agree to transfer the ownership of the stock to any other person. E, prior to the completion of a stock issuance, no person may offer or make an announcement to offer to purchase any stock to be issued or knowingly acquire any such stock in excess of the maximum purchase limitations established in the stock issuance plan. F, all stock issuances pursuant under this regulation must comply with the Fed securities offering regulations and provide that the offering be structured in a manner similar to the standard conversion under the Fed conversion regulation, including the priority rules accorded to members. G, a savings association subsidiary of the holding company may issue stock as part of a stock benefit plan to any insider, associate of it, insider, or tax qualified or non-tax qualified employee stock benefit plan of the holding company or its subsidiary. H, as part of reorganization, a reasonable amount of shares or proceeds may be contributed to a qualified charitable organization, provided that the contribution does not result in any taxes on excess business holdings under the Internal Revenue Code. And fourth, under Savings Association subsidiaries issuance of stocks, the procedural and substantive requirements of the Fed stock conversion regulation will apply to all mutual holding company stock issuances under this section unless it is clearly inapplicable as determined by the Fed. Letter E, contents of the stock issuance plans as it is applicable under requirements for mutual holding companies. Mandatory provisions of the plan. All mandatory provisions are deemed to be regulatory requirements, such as A, each plan must contain a description of all significant terms of the proposed stock issuance, must attach the proposed stock certificate, the proposed stock order form, and any other agreements concerning the rights of the stockholders. B, each plan must provide that Roman numeral 1 through Roman numeral 22. So each stock plan must provide that 1, the stock will be sold at market value based on an independent evaluation. 2, the total amount of outstanding common stock owned or controlled by persons other than the mutual holding company parent at the time of the issuance must be less than 50% of the total outstanding, although this provision may be omitted if the issuance will be conducted by an association that was in the stock form when acquired, provided the association is not a resulting or acquiree association. 3, all employee stock ownership plans or other tax-qualified employee stock benefit plans, ESOPs, must not encompass in the aggregate more than either 4.9% of the outstanding shares of the Savings Association's common stock or 4.9% of the Savings Association stockholders' equity. All ESOPs and management recognition plans, MRPs, must not encompass in the aggregate more than either 4.9% of the outstanding shares of common stock or 4.9% of the Savings Association shareholders' equity at the close of the proposed issuance. However, if the Savings Association's tangible capital equals at least 10% at the time of plan implementation, the FRB may permit the ESOPs and MRPs to encompass in the aggregate up to 5.88% of the outstanding common stock. All MRPs must not encompass in the aggregate more than either 1.47% of the common stock of the association or 1.47% of the association's stockholders' equity. However, if the Savings Association's tangible capital is at least 10% at the time of implementation of the plan, the FRB may permit MRPs to encompass in the aggregate up to 1.96% of the outstanding shares of the Savings Association's common stock or 1.9% of the Savings Association's shareholders' equity. Roman numeral 6, all stock option plans must not encompass in the aggregate more than either 4.9% of the association's outstanding common stock or 4.9% of the association's stockholders' equity. An ESOP or MRP or an option plan modified or adopted no earlier than 1 year after the close of a proposed issuance may exceed the percentage limitations of the regulation subject to the following requirements. A, all such common stock must be acquired in the secondary market. B, such acquisitions must begin no earlier than when such plan expansion is permitted to be made. And we're down to Roman numeral 8 within each stock plan provisions. The aggregate amount of common stock that may be in all option plans and MRPs are required by all insiders of the association must not exceed the following percentages of common stock or stockholders' equity. And there's a table here based on the institution size and the director and officer percentage. So, all right, we start with 50 million or less, and the officer and director percentage is 35%. From 50 to 100 million, 34. From 100 million to 150 million, 33. From 150 to 200 million, 32. From 200 to 250 million, 31. From 250 to 300 million, 30. From 300 to 350 million, 29. From 350 to 400 million, 28. from 400 to 450 million, 27, from 450 to 500 million, 26, and over $500 million is 25. These percentages may be exceeded if all stock acquired by insiders and associates of insiders or awarded under all MRPs, and these percentages may be exceeded if all stock acquired by insiders and associates of insiders or awarded under all MRPs and option plans in excess of those limitations is acquired in the secondary market. C. In calculating the number of shares held by insiders and their associates, shares awarded but not delivered under an ESOP, MRP, or option plan that are attributable to such persons are not counted. Roman numeral 9. The amount of common stock that may be encompassed under all option plans and MRPs must not exceed in aggregate 25% of the outstanding common stock held by persons other than the parent holding company. Roman numeral 10, the issuance must be conducted in compliance with the OTS securities offering regulation. Roman numeral 11, the sales price of the shares must be a uniform price determined in accordance with this regulation. Roman numeral 7, if at the close of the stock issuance the association has more than 35 shareholders of any class of stock, it must promptly register that class of stock under the SEC Act of 1934, and undertake not to deregister such stock for a period of 3 years. Roman numeral 13, if at the close of the stock issuance the association has more than 100 shareholders of any class of stock, the association must use its best efforts to encourage and assist a market maker to establish and maintain a market for that class of stock, and B, list that class of stock on a national or regional securities exchange or on NASDAQ quotation system. Roman numeral 14, for a period of 3 years following the proposed issuance, no insider of the association or his or her associates may purchase stock without the prior written approval of the FRB except from a registered broker-dealer. However, this restriction does not apply to negotiated transactions involving more than 1% of the outstanding stock in the class of stock. And B, purchases of stock made by and held by a tax-qualified or non-tax qualified employee stock benefit plan of the association, even if such stock is attributable to insiders of the association or their associates. Roman numeral 15, stock purchased by insiders of the association and their associates in the issuance shall not be sold for a period of at least 1 year following the date of purchase, except in the case of death of the insider or associate. Concerning restricted stock, each stock certificate must bear a legend giving appropriate notice of such restriction. Appropriate instructions must be issued to the transfer agent regarding the applicable restrictions on transfer of such stock. Any shares issued as a stock dividend or stock split with respect to any such restricted stock shall be subject to the same restrictions as apply to the restricted stock. The association will not offer or sell any of the stock proposed to be issued to any person whose purchase would be financed by funds loaned by the association. Roman numeral 18. If necessary, the association's charter will be amended to authorize issuance of stock. Roman numeral 14. The expenses incurred in connection with the issuance must be reasonable. The stock issuance plan, if proposed as part of a reorganization plan, may be amended or terminated in the same manner as the reorganization plan. Otherwise, the plan must provide that it may be amended by the Board of Directors as a result of comments from regulatory authorities or otherwise by the FRB at any time. Roman numeral 16, provided that unless an extension is granted by the FRB, the stock issuance plan will be terminated if not completed within 90 days of the date of approval, or for stock issuances subject to the offering circular requirements, the date on which the offering circulator was declared effective by the FRB. Roman numeral 17, the association may make scheduled contributions to a tax-qualified employee stock benefit plan provided they do not cause the association to fail to meet its capital requirements. Number 2, optional provisions of the plan. The stock issuance plan may provide that if the stock issuance is part of a reorganization plan, the stock offering may be commenced concurrently with or at any time after the mailing to members of the reorganizing association and any acquiree association of any proxy statement. Insignificant residues of stock not sold in the offering may be sold in such other manner with the FRB's approval. C. Under optional provisions of the plan, the stock issuance plan may provide that the association may issue or sell in lieu of shares of its stock units of securities consisting of stock with long-term warrants or other equity securities. And D, the association may reserve shares representing up to 10% of the offering for issuance to an employee stock benefit plan. I would break here, but my computer's taking a long time to upload to YouTube, so I'm going to keep going. I'm at letter F, which is charters and bylaws. The charter of a mutual holding company shall be in a form prescribed in Appendix A to Regulation MM. Corporate title, number 2. The corporate title of each mutual holding company must include the term mutual or MHC. To change its corporate title, the mutual holding company must submit a notice to the FRB. The FRB will provide a timely acknowledgement that states when the notice was received. If the FRB does not notify the holding company of an objection within 30 days of the date the notice was received, the title change may become effective. The FRB may only object if the title misrepresents the nature of the institution or the service it offers. 3. Amendments to charter. Mutual holding companies must comply with the following to adopt a charter amendment. 1. The board of directors must adopt a resolution proposing the charter amendment that includes the text of the amendment. B. If the proposed amendment would render or discourage a merger, proxy contest, the assumption of control by a mutual account holder, or the removal of incumbent management, or involve in a significant issue or law or policy, then it must be submitted to the FRB for approval. C. If the proposed amendment does not do any of those things, it must be submitted to the FRB at least 30 days prior to its effective date. It will be submitted to it. It will be automatically approved 30 days from the date of filing. No, it must be submitted to the FRB at least 30 days prior to its effective date. It will be automatically approved 30 days from the date of filing, provided the mutual holding company has met all the requirements and the FRB does not object or determine an application must be filed. Bylaws. And you can read more about this within the OCC chapter of the Code of Federal Regulations. A, B, C, D, E under bylaws. How further? Okay, all the way over to S. The rules and regulations concerning bylaws are applicable to mutual holding companies to the same extent as if mutual holding companies were federal mutual savings associations. B. Each holding company must hold an annual meeting of members within 150 days after the end of the mutual holding company's fiscal year. The meeting will be in the state that is the principal place of business for any other convenient place the board of directors designates. C. The holding company will provide a full report of its financial condition and its progress for the preceding year and its plan for the upcoming year. D. Procedures calling for a special meeting of the members will be set forth in the bylaws. E. The notice specifying the date, time, and place of the annual or any special meeting of members must be published for 2 successive weeks immediately prior to the week in which the meeting is held in a general circulation newspaper in the city or county in which the principal place of business is located, or the notice may be mailed at least 15 days, but not more than 45 days before the notice of the meeting to all members. Notices must be posted in all offices of the subsidiary savings association. F. The bylaws must provide a method for determining the members who are entitled to receive notices and who are entitled to vote. G. The number of members that constitutes a quorum must be in the bylaw. H. Procedures for proxies and voting must be in the bylaws. I. Procedures for communicating between members must be in the bylaws. No member will have the right to copy a list of members, their addresses, individual deposit or loan balances, or records. And 4. Any data from which such information could be constructed. J, the number of directors cannot be fewer than 5 or more than 15 unless approved by the FRB and must be specified in the bylaws. Their terms must also be specified. Each director must be a member of the mutual holding company. K, the meeting of the board will be covered in the bylaws, including the place, frequency, time, and procedure for notices. L, the bylaws must contain provisions for officers of the holding company. Their functions, duties, and powers must include a president, one or more vice presidents, a secretary, a treasurer, or comptroller, and others as needed. M, provisions for the removal of directors, procedures for filling vacancies, and how resignations are handled must be in the bylaws. N, powers of the board must be included, including the power to appoint an executive committee and other committees. And 3, the power to exercise any and all of the powers of the holding company not expressly reserved to the members. O, bylaws must provide for the nomination of directors. P, bylaws must provide for a process to amend itself. Q, bylaws may address any other appropriate topic. R, a mutual holding company must make copies of its charter and bylaws available to its members in the offices of each subsidiary savings association from which it draws members and must send a copy to any member upon request. S, approval of bylaws and of charters and bylaws. Roman numeral 1, all bylaw amendments must be submitted to the appropriate reserve bank for approval if it would render more difficult or discourage a merger, proxy, assumption of control by a mutual account holder, or the removal of incumbent management. Roman numeral 2, bylaws that would involve a significant issue or law or policy or are inconsistent with the requirements of Regulation MM must be submitted to the appropriate reserve bank for approval. And third, if the amendment does not have any of the above provisions, it must be submitted to the reserve bank at least 30 days prior to its effective date, at which time it will be effective unless the FRB notifies the mutual holding company during that 30-day period that the amendment is rejected and the application is required. Or that an application is required. Yeah, this still goes on for a while, so I'm going to break at letter G. It's very long.